Well, it's about 12 years ago that we looked at our congregation and we looked at our village, and we realised that the doorstep was too high and it was difficult for people who are not used to church to come. So we decided what we would do would be try and reach out to them. So we looked at our community, and the first group of people we looked at were those who were home alone. Some were elderly, some were alone for different reasons. So we decided to make a lunch, and it was a small lunch to start with. There were about 15 of us. And then it grew and grew because people heard about it and they brought their friends. And we cooked this lunch. We cooked it twice a month at first, but we do it now once a month. And we cook this lunch for the elderly, and it's our way of trying to reach out to them, to serve them, and to bless them. At the same time as after eating, we usually have some literature to give out, some tracts of different kinds, topical things. Last month they all got a little booklet about the Queen's 90th birthday, which has got some very good gospel information in for them. And those are our lunches there once a month now. We looked at the young couples, young marrieds, who don't come to church either. They're all very tired. They work about 50, 60 miles away, and it's bed and breakfast really for them. And they don't really mix, they don't know anybody much. And thought, how can we reach them? So we cook a meal on a Friday night at 6:30 when we get home from work. And it's free, and it's a wide range of dishes, and it's very relaxed. They can come, bring their families, bring their children, they chat, socialise, and get to know each other really. And then after the meal, we have a time of fellowship. We have a film or a testimony or gospel stories, quiz, sometimes a quiz. They never know what's going to happen.
Storyteller.
So they can't, yes, we have a super storyteller. We've had all sorts of things. They never know what's going to come, so they can't ever guess. And then there's a prayer time, and it's a really relaxed time. And people come to that who wouldn't come to church at all, but it is cafe church, it is a church service as such. Then we looked at the next group of people. I spotted all these young mothers standing outside the school frozen stiff, and I thought, what can we do for them? So we opened up the church as a playgroup. Several have brought the babies to be christened since then, and due to that, Sue, our minister, comes in fairly regularly, and she gets alongside them and gets to know them, and they're warming. They're definitely warming. One lady particularly was quite against us. She said, oh, this religion business, but she's really, really warming. It's drops in buckets, what we call it, putting a drop in a bucket. That's all we're doing at the minute. It's getting alongside these people, breaking down barriers, letting them get to know us, and then we can share with them. But each time there is gospel literature given out. The children have gone home this time with a children's little leaflet about the Queen. There's always something on, because otherwise we're not doing it just to feed them and waste our time. We're wasting our time if we're doing it at a human level. The aim really is to share Jesus with them.
Where we were at originally was that the problem that we've still got now was space.
Yeah, that
and
from the internal
deterioration of
church point
buildings.
of view, it was definitely that. Well, I've been around here for about 14 years, I suppose. Come from the south of England, from the real part of the world. But when I came here, there'd been a lot of conversations going on with other churches in the locality, Anglican churches, but other denominations too, and they kind of got nowhere, and they'd gone on for years and years and years. Do you remember, Steward?
I do.
You were part of those, weren't
Certainly
you?
was common ground.
Well, even before that, there were just meetings I went to at the church a mile down the road at Anlaby, and we seemed to go round and round in circles and never get anywhere. And eventually, all of this sort of stuff ground to a halt. And as Sue says, common ground happened, which was discussions with the Anglican church across the road. And for various reasons, it just fell out of bed. And we were determined here that we wanted to do stuff for the community at this church. And so we resolved to get on with our own scheme. So out of all of that was launched the Ignition project. And the first phase of the Ignition project has actually happened, and we're now looking forward to the second phase of it. The first phase was about putting an extension on the front of the church, and that gradually developed and evolved, and we ended up with a coffee shop. We now have a 6-day-a-week coffee shop running on the front of our church premises, but the space doubles up as use for church purposes as well. But the main thing about it, certainly from my point of view, is that it attracts a huge number of people from the community.
I think the big thing is that the members of the church use the coffee shop as well, you know, considerable amount. You know, there's a lot of people that use it during the week, and of course that's the mission, because they're mixed in with all these other people that are using it. And we started a once a month event on a Wednesday night called Face to Face, which is when basically the coffee shop's open in the evening, and it's just open in the normal way, and the public come in, and we put on extras like, you know, karaoke type Christian songs. I think the coffee shop's really been a lot more successful than I ever thought it would be.
I think a lot of people have said it. People who were quite antagonistic towards the concept in the first place have completely changed their ideas. The second phase of the operation is again going to be very much community focused. It's got to be, because apart from anything else, on a financial front, we will rely upon grants from organisations in the community, and organisations in the community, by definition, by the nature of what they are, will not put money into Christian mission work overtly. So we have to be doing stuff here which is community linked, it's community service, because that's the only way we can raise the money we need to be able to do the missional work that we want to do alongside the community service. So that's going to be the focus of it, and it's probably going to end up as quite a long haul, because we think the cost of this will be around £1 million to do the second phase of the development. And if you stop to think about it, we've got a membership here of 100, and we don't have scores of really wealthy people on our membership list, so we're going to be dependent on funding from within the church, from district circuit, from the Methodist connection, as well as from outside funding agencies. And so all of that's got to be worked through.
It's morally difficult for some of us as well, because our sister church now at Selby Street is looking after the homeless. So this morning, for example, I've been dealing with a chap who lives under the bush in Selby Street next door to the church, who has nothing, you know, and he comes into the building for meals and food parcels and friendship and all the other things that we offer. And then I come here and we're going to be spending £1 million on a suite of premises, you know, and so I found that quite a challenge. However, this place I've been here for 46 years, I think it is, and the back rooms that behind us where we're sitting now are really in need of repair. And the roof leaks in every one of the rooms in the winter, and it's freezing cold on the whole, mostly when you come in the winter. So we are a community hub, but we need to be up to date with our buildings. So that's how I console myself with what's going on.
That's right. We've had to hold back on some expenditure on the property because, you know, with the plans to redevelop, you can't be putting thousands of pounds into patching up roofs. As you say, the roofs have been leaking and all the rest. So we've done what we've had to do. But now we're thinking we don't really want to spend any more money on the deteriorating premises. We want to get that money together so we can invest it into something really good. But it does create a dilemma for lots of people, as you say, with seeing other places like Selby Street where, you know, the needs are
well, the
different,
circus have supported us at Selby Street with the money because the people, our clients, have no money at all. A lot of them don't even receive benefits because they're homeless. And so this morning, the gentleman I've been dealing with this morning said he didn't want to be on benefits anyway because he would drink it away. And so we're talking about addictions and, you know, the rest of the stuff that goes with that. And it's a steep learning curve for us all that are working there. There's about 12 of us from here that planted ourselves there to help. And so the contrast between what we're doing here and what we're doing there, because none of us have left here, we're still doing both, you know, is what we're coming to terms with.
That's right. I mean, Selby Street was a church in its own right until a couple of years ago, but it got down to a membership of, I think it was about 2, wasn't it, in the end, the membership.
Two and a dog.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
And so, you know, it's now a sister church to ourselves, really, and it's technically, it's a class of this church at Anlaby
Yes.
Park, and so that's why people from here are actually pitching in
And added to that, I think, you know, the other thing is, Steve, I'm sure you'll agree, what comes, we need to be up to date and you know, our buildings need to be attractive to ask people to come to.
Yeah.
And if we're hoping to be a Christian community hub, people are not going to come if it's freezing cold with a leaking roof.
Yeah.
So we do have to do something about it anyway, apart from anything else.
Yeah. I think in terms of other churches who sometimes get a bit down in the dumps about the way things are going, as we do here sometimes as well, you just got to keep that kind of vision that there's a purpose to what you're trying to do. And it is about sharing the gospel with other people. And I mean, the best example I can give is the old faithful about the glass half full or half empty. And I think it's so easy in church life these days to adopt the glass half empty philosophy instead of the glass half full. And if you can be optimistic, and if you can actually see where you're going and see some way of getting there, that's half the battle, really. And it's when you get in the downward spiral of despondency that really you're on the path to extinction.
Well, the gospel's an exciting message, and if we come to church looking as if we're going to the dentist and go out of church looking as if we've just been, then nobody's going to want to join us. Whereas if we shine the gospel message from us as individuals and we look excited in worship and we come and we look as if we're really engaging with Jesus through the Holy Spirit in our services, then people are going to want to come and watch and see and join in and be part of it. You know, so many times people say, we want a bit of that, you know, and we want them to have a bit of that, a lot more of that than in whatever we're doing and whatever we're doing in the church or wherever we are for that matter.
The church had been through quite a dip, really. I think of it as a kind of slough of despond, because there were plans 8 years ago that a private developer would take over the whole site, demolish the current premises and build a small community chapel. That was just as the credit crunch really hit and the developer pulled out at the last minute, which left everybody completely uncertain as to what the role of the church was. So there were a few difficult years while people began to work through what we could do. And then the circuit appointed a new minister and a deacon to work with him with a specific brief to look at how the church here could relate more to the community. And a piece of research was done, a community audit, which showed up, among other things, that there were quite high levels of loneliness, both among older people and young mums who had difficulty with building relationships. So as a starter, we started the community cafe on a Wednesday morning for a six-week trial period during the summer holidays, and it's never closed since. We open over Christmas and every time all through the school holidays, sometimes with difficulty because we rely on volunteers, but it's met such a need, and actually from that has spawned all sorts of other contacts in the community, and other groups have started. We had a community art group that was funded by the council, and out of that there is now an informal craft group that meets. That I was just talking to the lady who runs it at the moment, said people don't have to have any skills, come along. Part of the purpose is just to sit and chat, and it meets a real community need. And other formal or less formal community groups, we've got a good relationship with the local councillors, and it has become a real community centre in that sense.
We've also started Messy Church just over a year ago. We have one of our teenage girls who was on the micro-YPS scheme, and she chose as her project in her church to actually get Messy Church off the ground. And she has organised this for a full year. She does a lot of the planning. We meet regularly, and she has ideas for the craft to make sure we all know what we're doing and food and everything. So she's finished her year now, and she's off to university in the autumn, but obviously we're keeping going with Messy Church. And we've had a lot of mums here and their children today in school holidays who actually come to Messy Church as well. And because of the need, they've now started a youth club as well on a Friday evening. So
And that's one of the things I find fascinating, that there is an overlap between everything that's going on. When Messy Church started, I was concerned that there would be some of the long-standing members who would feel this was a way of getting people to come on a Sunday morning. And I tried to emphasise that it was a way of developing a new community, a new congregation. But actually we've got quite a number of the families who came to Messy Church who now come on a Sunday morning as well. And you will meet them on a Wednesday and all sorts of other community groups. There is such an overlap between what is going on that there's a real sense of a complete community, really, just with different aspects at different times. And I find that extremely fascinating and healthy, and a good sign that God is active among his people in all kinds of ways. As far as the building is concerned, we've gradually discovered, although it's a very nice building in many ways, and at one stage it was going to be demolished, now we've not got enough room, really. It's amazing how things change in a few years. It's not a terribly welcoming building. It's a bit of a maze and dark corners, and one of the things that we need to do, and actually desperately want to do, is to upgrade the building to be a place that welcomes. I think we've established that there are people here who welcome, but we want the place to be welcoming and doors to be more open and lighter and that kind of thing. So we're having to start raising money.
Well, it's always been a really busy church, always been let out to groups like Slimming World and Brownies and all sort of community groups. And we got to a point where actually the building wasn't really big enough. And so we decided to build the Welcome Centre, which took a long time to do, but because of hard work from people here, but also the generosity of the district and the circuit and grants, the Welcome Centre was opened 2 years ago. We knew that there were lots and lots of needs in the community, but it was a question of absolutely finding out what those needs were, to use the building and to use our resources for mission. So we decided to have what we call a shout-out day, and some of the musicians from the church went out outside the shops and played music, which attracted people, and then others from the church talked to people as they passed to establish what the needs were in the community. We also went to the doctors and to other groups in the village. And we established that the needs very much were, well, we wanted to look for 3 needs actually. One was for facilities for young families, and particularly for dads, just to come and play and get together socially as well. The other need was for older people to be able to just come and gather, not to belong to a group like a pensioners association or something like that, but just to come and gather conversation. And the other was for youth. And so we started to establish different groups. There was already a youth group running, but that needed to be expanded. We had Let's Play, which was being run by a young mum, and we then sort of adopted that in order to provide facilities for play. And that runs on a Tuesday and a Saturday morning. Saturdays are wonderful because dads can come along to that, and we get a lot of dads coming to that. And that runs alongside a coffee morning, which is also a facility for older people, so it's wonderful to have the two running together. For older people, we started soup lunches, which currently are running once a fortnight, but we're hoping that they may run more frequently. We're sort of taking it from there. The children's groups are doing extremely well. We're getting sort of 35 children coming in on a Saturday morning, and probably 20 to 25 on a Tuesday. And I think that's where our sort of future is, really. We also realised that lots of the groups that we're running in the church building are sort of separate. You know, there were brownies running, guides running, Slimming World, French-tastic, but all separate. And yet we were all doing God's work. It's all about mission. So the church council appointed me as a mission coordinator, and my brief was to try to establish a relationship amongst all the groups in the church, using the building, so that we feel like one community rather than separate ones. And so my brief was to sort of get relationships going. So in order to do that, I've been going into the groups, but also as a church we have had various activities going on which would bring the groups together. So we had a mission day where every group did a sort of display of what they're about, and then we shared that together. We had an arts festival in which all the groups were invited to do something creative, nothing professional, just creative work. Again, we got involved together on that. And then we had a family fun day. And increasingly the groups have started to build up a relationship, getting to know each other better. We've reached a point now where we feel that that's developing well, and we need now to start to nurture the families that are coming in and the other groups that are coming in, particularly the families. And so we have appointed now a mission enabler who is experienced in nurturing young families. I've done what I can do, I think, in building up the relationship, but I can't take them on that step further. So we're committed now to actually employing someone to do that, and that role starts in September, so that's our next move, really. In the course of the work that we've been doing with the families, particularly with the youth group, there have been some bereavements in families, and we've found that parents and children have wanted somewhere quiet to go. Now the church itself is very busy during the week. We had a bit of derelict land at the back of the church, and so it was decided that that would be developed into a peace garden. And again, it's fulfilling a need, but it's also bringing the groups together, because different groups in the church are contributing to it. For example, we've got the out of school club which runs here, they're doing a little sort of vegetable patch. And some of the dads that are involved in Let's Play are doing some of the planting in the pots. So it's another means of us bringing people together to understand that we're all doing God's work together, not necessarily coming on a Sunday morning, but all doing God's work together from this building.
Our story started last summer, I guess, in the summer of 2015, when we discovered a large issue with the roof, a very significant issue, which meant that we had to erect some scaffolding in here to support the roof. The Reverend William Jenkins was an itinerant minister who turned to designing churches for John Wesley, and this is a great example of a Methodist preaching house of that era. Originally seated around 1,000 people, which is quite amazing, but and in those days it was filled with people. Even a century ago, in around 1900, it was believed that this was far too large for the people of Malton. So once we discovered the issue with the roof last year, we looked to see what we could do with this building, see how we can repurpose it, if you like, for the community at large, and to make it smaller as a church community as well. So we put that to the church, and almost to a man and boy, they said, look, let's do something with this building, because we can't see it permanently closed. And there was a discussion about that, and we decided that the best thing would be to think about creating a community hub here with a smaller church within the building. We then set about engaging an architect, and we have some very exciting feasibility plans, which would see the pews which you see around us removed. These pews, box pews, are historic. They are original to the building. To remove the pews downstairs and to create a horizontal subdivision at gallery level, and to create two distinct spaces in this building, with a smaller space here on this level for worship as a church, and to make this building financially sustainable, because we don't see any benefit in seeing this building permanently closed in the future. So that brings with it a number of challenges for us, and earlier this year we made an application to the Listed Buildings Advisory Committee of the Methodist Church in a bid to remove the pews, both upstairs and downstairs, and with what we consider to be some very exciting plans to change this building. And why are we doing this? Well, we wouldn't be doing it at all unless we believe there were two strong drivers for it. One is that Malton, for the first time in nearly 200 years, is expanding, and so we have a great mission outreach opportunity here. By 2027, this population is going to increase by around 50%, and so we thought that was a great opportunity for us for mission outreach into this community. There is a need for community space. There's a dearth of community facilities in Malton, and we felt that that could fulfill both those needs. So our challenge now is to see what we can do to work constructively with the authorities to ensure that we can see this building be sustainable, financially sustainable, for worship, for mission and outreach going forward into the future, as it was designed to do 200 years ago. But we believe there is a strong future if there is a will for people to make those decisions and for us to see a new future for this building.
I don't think John Wesley ever came to Wetherby, but our church was built somewhere around that time in 1829. We're at the centre of a market town, and we've got a population of 20,000. And we're right there in the centre in Bank Street. Loads of people walk past our church, and when we first came to this church way back in the 1980s, I can remember those solid wooden doors. And I remember walking past this church, even though I was looking for a Methodist church, thinking, oh gosh, I wonder what goes on behind those doors.
But they were still there when I arrived, 10 or 12 years ago. to properly appreciate all that's happened here, we probably do need to think about what it was like beforehand. Dark, unwelcoming at the front door, coming into a chapel that was equally dark, wasn't it? Fixed pews, side aisles, real tightly packed aisles, and that impacted on weddings. You know, bride and the father coming down the aisle, and bride and groom going back up the aisle were really hard to do. I think it was even a time when there was a coffin that got caught, wasn't it? We couldn't get in because the coffin was too large. So lots of good reasons why it needed to change. Poor electric heating. And just not versatile enough. This area where we're sitting now, the communion area, was far smaller. It was lower down, so you couldn't see people here. So basically, you had to lead the service from the pulpit, and that was it really. And if you wanted to get from this part of the building to the back for coffee after worship, well, people had to go out the front door and all the way around. The alternative was to go through a maze of corridors. Past those toilets. You remember those toilets?
I remember those toilets. I remember as well we had some very strong members of the congregation who were wheelchair users, and our church 10 years ago was totally unfriendly for anyone who wanted to use a wheelchair. They had to be sat at the front, facing the congregation, in a totally obvious place. I mean, talk about not being part of the congregation. We didn't make it easy for people with wheelchairs.
Back in 2007, we decided that the congregation wanted us to go ahead with developing the building. And so we put together a group that became known as the Building Investigation Group, BIG. And they looked at the different ways in which we could develop this building. We looked at a basic programme of maintenance of the chapel itself. We looked at a programme of developing the chapel itself. And we looked at a programme of developing the whole of the church centre. And we went into details of all of those 3 levels of programme, kept reporting back to the congregation, asking them what they thought, telling them what we'd found out, costing it all, until eventually we had 3 schemes that we offered the congregation for Church Council ultimately to decide upon. And Church Council, with the backing of all the congregation and the church family, decided that they wanted to go ahead with full development of the whole building. And so the Building Investigation Group then became the Building Implementation Group. So we still retained the name BIG. We liked that, the BIG group. And we went into further details then for planning for the development of the whole building. There were complications because, of course, we had to go through Leeds City Council and the Listed Buildings Advisory Committee. And our wonderful idea of having a glass porch on the front of the building didn't work. They wouldn't accept it because it was a listed building in a conservation area. And so we had to rethink that. And our rethinking led us to develop the link that linked together the church with the rest of the building. And what a good thing that we had to rethink that, because the link area is the most wonderful meet and greet area that we can use 7 days a week, not just when the chapel itself is in use. Our big news went out regularly to everybody that wanted a copy. There were multiple copies left in the chapel and in the buildings for everybody to help themselves, and we let people know exactly what we were doing. And eventually we were able to present to the church family and the church council the details of the project for developing the whole centre at a cost of about £500,000. We went forward in faith that the money would be there, that people would support us throughout the project. And the money was there. We got a lot of grants, 50,000 from the circuit, 50,000 from the district. We had grants from the Church Advisory Trust, from RANK and from many other organisations. We had many wonderful fundraising events that were great fellowship as well as great fundraisers. And the money came in much quicker than we anticipated. So in fact, we only were fundraising until the end of the building project. We'd paid it off almost as soon as we'd finished the project. When the building actually began, when the contractors came on site, we were wonderfully supported by the contractors, and we were able to use our premises throughout. Each weekend, the premises were cleared in such a way that we could worship in the hall. And in spite of our fears that we would lose members of the congregation when they had to walk through a building site to come to worship, we in fact increased the worshipping numbers, and people were with us every step of the way. They enjoyed being part of the consultation. Which chairs would we have? What colours would we use? What sort of a carpet would we have? People took part in that consultation. We abided by majority decisions so that everybody felt that they were involved. We had an open day part way through the building project at the time that the contractors were in the building. They cleared it so that it was safe for people to come in, and people had a wander around and saw exactly what was happening and could imagine better what it was going to be like at the end. And then finally the day came when we were able to move in, and we had a wonderful opening weekend, and we saw the building in all its beauty and all its grandeur, and realised what a success everybody's support had created.
4 years on, we now truly have a community building. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I first came to this church, it was very dark, very disparate with the building. We couldn't get around it very easily, but now we have a truly open building, a building used by many of the community. Over 40 organisations use our building throughout a month. That's about 300 to 800 footfall almost every week. They range from table tennis, keep fit classes, coffee shop on a Wednesday, coffee shop on a Saturday. We have disabled groups, many different disparate types of groups using our facilities. This does bring challenges. Not problems so much, because the problems were sorted when we first planned. But the challenges are to make sure the building is open for business, it's safe, secure, clean and tidy, and flexible. Because many of the groups don't necessarily want to have tables or chairs out, so they have to be put away, brought out for different groups. The chapel is also used. They're used by the council. The town council use our chapel once a month. And again, a different setup. And this happens almost every week. Today, for example, we have a group of disabled people coming to practice for the theatre in the chapel. So we'll put the chairs away, we'll bring them back out again, ready for a wedding on Saturday.
As a church, we have stepped out in faith. It's been hard work at times, but that hard work has been rewarded. We feel extremely blessed. We've had the opportunity to see our numbers grow, both not only the use of the building, but in worship and in membership. At a time when other parts of our connection have declined in membership, we've managed to grow, which is encouraging. The age profile has changed in the church as well. We have more young families, and as a consequence, we're seeing more baptisms than we have done before. Well, certainly in the last 10 or 20 years. So lots of good things. Teenage groups, our teenage group is strong. And 2 of our teenagers became stewards, age 14, and are still serving now, age 16. So we hope that we've been an encouragement to others as well. Others in our district, but others locally as well, including our near neighbours at Boston Spa as they are embarking on their redevelopment scheme, as they reach out to their community.